Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Patti Callahan Henry.
I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
And this is Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support independent bookstores, authors, and librarians and readers like you. Mm-hmm. On this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Jillian Cantor to discuss her newest novel called The Greatest Lie of All. Such a great title.
It is.
It really is. The book was released on December 3rd, and we are so excited to talk about it.
Every time I hear it, and on the cover, if you guys all see, it actually says like love, like really light, and then lies. I read, and every time I pick it up, I would be singing "The Greatest Love."
Could you just go ahead and sing it right now? The whole thing.
Such a good message in that song too. Anyway, okay. So before you have to listen to me sing anymore, we have a quick reminder to check out all the fun things going on in our Friends and Fiction community at friendsandfiction.com.
So we get asked a lot. We get emails, DMs. Where do I find everything? I'm going to tell you right now. The one place to find every little thing is on friendsandfiction.com. Like Kristy just said, this is where you will find our show schedule. And just you wait until you see what we have coming up. In-person events. Our next one is not going to be until next year, but it's going to be a whopper of fun. Links to our bookshop.org page. Our award-winning Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, which is a tongue twister, our merch store, and our newsletter sign up. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you want to know more about us and the authors that we interview and the live events that we have, and we offer a lot, just check out friendsandfiction.com.
And also on friendsandfiction.com, as Patti mentioned, you will find a link to our Substack, which is our email newsletter, and you can sign up to get that for free, or you can join us at the paid level on Friends and Fiction Endless Stories. It is normally $5 a month, but until mid-December, we are giving you 20% off of our paid subscription. So for just $1 a week, you get all sorts of bonus content all month long that helps support our show.
That's right. And I love our Substack because it's not just that you get these free weekly emails or posts if you decide to do it on the app, but our paid subscribers have access to this incredible extra content. Sometimes we do essays, we do deeper dives every single week with our weekly show guests. We ask them questions in the newsletter that we don't ask them on the show. You get bonus green room footage from the live shows, roundtable discussions. Mary Kay just did an amazing one on thrillers and why we like to be scared, which I don't, so I'm not in on the discussion. But she did talk to 5 other thriller writers about it. And we have done one live Ask Me Anything, which is a private Zoom session with just the 4 of us.
Yep. And so our next live VIP Zoom session will be with the 4 of us on Wednesday, December 18th, right before this month's live show. So only our paid subscribers are eligible to join the 4 of us for an exclusive ugly sweater party. And it might just get ugly too, because we're pretty competitive about it. So we will ask for pictures of your festive frocks in advance. The 4 of us will judge, and then you will most certainly be judging us on what we are wearing. See what I did there? Okay. On the live Zoom, we'll pick a winner. 4 lucky winners will get a prize from one of us, but you have to be a paid subscriber to join, and you have to be present on the Zoom to win.
And I have to say that we've tried to win before, but all of us are trying extra hard this year. And mine is so ugly, I'm almost going to be embarrassed to wear it.
So, mine is like Mine's ugly. Mine's really ugly, but can it be cute ugly? It's kind of
It
cute
could
ugly.
be. Mine's not
Maybe.
cute ugly. I can tell you that. I can tell you that. But also, yes, the four of us will be there, but Meg's going to be there too for
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
Zoom. So she'll be. Anyway, if you enjoy tuning in to our friends and fiction interviews, this is a big way that you can support us. So come on in and join us and take advantage of the 20% off deal, which lets you upgrade for just $4 a month.
Yes. Okay. One last announcement. I swear this is it. Okay. But don't forget about the Friends in Fiction 2025 book subscription box that is available through our friends at Oxford Exchange. For one price, you'll get 3 separate shipments in 2025. So in March, you'll get Patty's new book. In May, you'll get mine. And in June, you'll get Kristin Harmel's. And you have the option to add on Mary Kay Andrews' paperback of Summers at the Saint if you want to, but you don't have to. And then plus you'll get exclusive gifts, a Friends in Fiction friendship bracelet and car magnet that are available only with this bundle. So visit Oxford Exchange now to get yours.
I mean, the Oxford Exchange website, you don't have to go.
Yeah, you don't have to go in person, but that would be really fun. It's a
you
great
don't have to go to
store.
Tampa.
You haven't been. If you're ever in Tampa, check it out because it's
oh my gosh, the most amazing store. They have a champagne bar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that doesn't make you want to go, but
sold.
All right, y'all, let's welcome our friend Jillian Cantor. She is the USA Today and internationally best-selling author of 13 novels for teens and adults, including, most recently, before this one, The Fiction Writer.
Her novels have been chosen for Indie Next, Library Reads, and Amazon Best of the Month, and they have been translated into 15 languages.
She was born and raised in a suburb of Philadelphia, just like I was. We need to figure out if we were.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She looks much younger than me, but I wonder if we're in the same suburb. But she currently lives in Arizona, where I've never lived, with her husband and 2 sons. She has a BA from Penn State and an MFA from the University of Arizona.
Her new novel, The Greatest Lie of All, was just released and follows a glamorous romance novelist and an aspiring starlet in an addictive story about love, ambition, and how far we're willing to go to protect our hearts.
And our lives, for that matter. All right, Alan, can you bring Jillian on, please?
Hi, my friend. Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to dive right in. I was lucky enough to have an early read of this book, and I am so happy to be here talking about it with you. We share an editor, and any friend of Laura's is, a friend of mine. The Greatest Lie of All is about a fledgling actress named Amelia Grant who is at rock bottom when she is offered the opportunity of a lifetime to star in a biopic or a biopic. Everybody says it different. About a famous romance author named Gloria Diamond. She will discover a secret that rocks her world. So if that's what this is about, is there anything you'd want to add? And our favorite question, what do you think it is really about?
Well, that is always the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, thank you guys for having me. And Patti, you were so kind to read this early and offer a lovely blurb, which looks beautiful on the cover. I was so thrilled to get it. So The Greatest Lie of All is about this romance novelist named Gloria Diamond, who is fictional. But in my head, she's sort of modeled after like a Jackie Collins, Danielle Steele, one of those really like glamorous romance novelist.
She's so glam.
Yeah, she's lit. I mean, Gloria Diamond isn't her real name, although she goes by it by the point in the book. But she's all about diamonds. Her dog dresses in diamonds. She's very glamorous. And I think like part of what it was about is sort of my own love for those 80s romance novels and novelists. And then I think like if we're going thematically, it's a lot about like motherhood and sort of like, like how well do we know our mothers and how important our mothers are to us. The other main character of the novel, aside from Gloria, is Amelia Grant, and she's the actress that's hired to play Gloria. in the movie about her life. And she has just lost her mother. Like her mother's pretty young, in her late 50s. She just like drops dead one day. And Amelia's still kind of reeling from that. This is like the first project she does after her mother dies. And Gloria Diamond was her mother's favorite romance novelist. So I think in like large part, it's really about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that was such a nice parallel too, to kind of like bring that together, and a good motivation for why she would take the role on. Okay, well, we love talking origin stories. So can you tell us how did the idea for this novel first come to you? Like, do you know sort of the seed of the story for Amelia and Gloria, or did it just unfold?
So I think Gloria came to me first, and
like
I
that.
wanted to write something about a romance novelist. And I was talking to my agent about it, and we were just sort of like throwing ideas around. And I think it came from just like a brainstorming call that we had, where I think she was the one who said, "Well, what if this actress that was hired to play her in the story of her life discovered some secret about her?" And then I was like, "Oh, she has a secret." So I sort of went from there. It was like one of those books where I didn't plot it out in advance, but it sort of like came to me as I was going. I vaguely knew what her was, but then I learned a lot about it as I was writing. It was really fun. I love books like that.
I love finding out where stories start. And sometimes it's, something somebody says, sometimes it's something we read or an idea out of the blue. But I rarely hear that it's something an agent said. So I really love that.
And my agent is the best brainstormer. Like so many of my books have come from, I guess the other thing, which I sort of just remember right now, is that I was reading this book, I think it was called The Method, and it was just a nonfiction book about method acting. And so I was thinking a lot about it. And so Amelia in the book is a method actress, and that's why she insists on going to meet Gloria and spend time with her. So that definitely played into it too. That was like a background piece. That wasn't the inspiration, but yeah, that was a little part of it, I think, too.
I always say we only have our own compost pile, right? So, the books you're reading, the music you're listening to, the other things that you care about, but
there's nothing like having someone to be able to really brainstorm with. And even if it's someone who isn't a writer, like some of my best ideas have come from, my book that's coming out, Beach House Rules. I had this crazy idea, and I sat down at lunch with my friends one day, and I was like, I want to write a book about a commune. And they were all like, oh my God. And started just like throwing things out. Like, well, this would have to happen and this would have to happen. And I was like, wow, y'all are really good y'all are hired. Like, this is great.
Could you send them over here? Thanks.
Right? Well, and you guys, of course. I'm friend. We're the core brainstormers, right?
We're like a core memory.
Yeah.
All right, Jillian, I want to dive a little bit more into your writing process, but the opening line of this book is, "Sometimes the end of everything sneaks up on you when you least expect it."
Mm-hmm.
My question is, was this always the opening line? Tell us about your writing process in that way. How much did you know? Where did you start? It's such a great opening line.
Oh, thank you. It actually was always the first opening line.
Oh, I love that.
And I think a lot of times I'll have like a basic idea, but I won't start writing anything. I knew I was going to write a book about an actress and this Gloria Diamond figure. And I knew that the actress's mother was going to have just died. And so I hadn't started writing anything yet. I was just sort of thinking about it. And that line came to me one day, and I wrote it down in a note in my phone. And that is often how my first lines come about, where it's like, I don't really know what the book's about yet. I haven't started it. I haven't really plotted it. And then a line will come to me, and I'll be like, well, this would be a great first line. So that is how it happened. That's how it happened with this book. I wrote it down in my phone. I think I want to say it was like this time of year when I started writing, and I wrote it in my phone, and then I probably walked away for a month, and I was just sort of like thinking about it in the back of my head. And then in January, I think I started it.
Okay.
But yeah, that was always the first line.
And did you I know you said you don't outline, but did you at least have a place you were going? Did you have, You knew you had a method actress and you knew you had a romance novelist. And that was
Yeah,
about
and
it.
sometimes I do outline.
Okay.
But I didn't for this book, but I did know there's like a twist. I'm not going to give it away, but there is a twist near the end of the book, and I did know that
Okay.
the whole time.
That
And
part
so,
you knew. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I sort of was writing towards that. But then I think I got there and I was like, okay, wait, this isn't the end of the book. Everything isn't resolved.
Right.
So I had to figure it out from there. But I usually do write towards some kind of like an end point or a twist
Okay.
or a reveal that I do know going in.
That you already
Sometimes
knew.
I do outline though. I just
Okay.
my natural way of writing is not to outline, but
Yeah.
especially in some of my historical books where
Yeah.
it was like the timeline was so important, or I wanted to keep something historically accurate, or when I did my retelling of The Great Gatsby and I was trying to like interact with the original book, I had those outlined. But yeah, this book I did not.
That's
not
amazing.
outline. Yeah.
That's amazing. So speaking of process, we share an editor now, Laura Brown at Atria. And I talked to her about this novel and she loves it so much. And you, of course. And so I am passing along a question from her. So she is on the show without being on the show.
I love that.
She said, what was the most surprising thing you learned while you were writing this book?
Gosh, that's a good question.
She
I have to
stumped
say
us,
that one
didn't
for
she?
Ray.
I know.
I know. What was the most surprising thing I learned? Well, I think like a large part of The Greatest Lie of All takes place in the 80s.
Yeah.
And, I was very much alive in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I have very bad like I don't remember anything about it. I guess I was like mostly in elementary school, a little bit in middle school. So I had to do a little bit of research about the 80s and just sort of like having to look things up and like remembering like what the time was like actually surprised me a little bit more. It wasn't exactly what I remembered. Of course, my character Gloria is like in her 20s in the 80s, so she had a different experience of the 80s than I did. But the other thing I will say going to the 80s is that like multiple people have called that historical when talking about this book. It's like,
Okay.
wait, that's historical?
Okay. So wait, so I heard this the other day. Okay. So there is a real line for this, and it is 47 years.
From
That
the day.
is the true cutoff for what is historical fiction. So like A Happier Life is not technically historical because it's set in 1976.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Wait, so maybe it was 49 years. Whatever it was, like it's not, but it's by 1 year. Now,
Okay.
who came up with that? I can't remember, but I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
That's
But
so
it is,
funny.
but that's an interesting conversation too, because to me, historical fiction, if you have to go back and recreate a time period, it's kind of historical fiction. Like if you aren't just going with it and you have to go look stuff up, and I mean, like, especially if you weren't alive, or you were very young and you don't remember, all of those things. So I think that's an interesting conversation for sure.
So you could have called me. Those are my high school and college years.
Well, my
I
mom
remember them all. I
definitely
can tell you.
fact-checked it for me pretty hard.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of it was, Beaufort specific.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. For the 80s to be historical is kind of depressing.
Yeah. It is very depressing, but also true that I did have to look things up. So
Yeah. I mean,
and it would like
I don't
didn't feel historical to me going in. So I think that was the surprising part. Like in my head, was completely a contemporary novel. And I've written historical before. So it was like, no, this is a contemporary one.
Yeah.
But then I
But
don't
it's
know.
not. It's not.
It's kind of not. There are a bunch of chapters in the 80s and I had to look up some things.
That's amazing. Well, I felt like I was in the 80s, so you did a great job.
Okay. Well, I was alive in the 80s, so
I remember getting a New Kids on the Block puzzle. That's like one of my like only 80s memories. Isn't that
Your
funny?
core 80s memory.
It's my core 80s memory. Yeah. Okay. So Amelia's life is spectacularly falling apart when we meet her, and nearly everything is going wrong. So it seems like this could really be the perfect time for a movie role like this. And It kind of even seems like maybe it could be a salvation, but of course, is it? That's a big question that we're asking here. So we hear from Amelia and a woman named Mare. Well, she was Mare in my head. Is she pronounced Mare or is she pronounced Mary?
Yeah, Mare. Well, her name
Okay.
was Mary, but everyone called her Mare.
Mare.
So yeah,
Okay.
Mare.
So did you always know that these would be the 2 points of view for the story? And how did you decide?
Yeah, I did, because I knew Amelia was going to have a story, in the present day, as she's going to learn about this woman and play the role in the movie. And then I also wanted you to be able to see Gloria's story before she was famous, when she goes by her given name, which is Mare. So I did know that they were always going to be the 2 point of views. There was like a tiny deviation from that, not to give anything away, but I think there's like one chapter from someone else's point of view, which explains a little bit later on in the book. But I did know that, and yeah, I mean, that was like one of those choices that I made in the beginning. It's like I don't know exactly where the book's going to go or everything is going to happen, but I do, when I start, I do try to like get to figure out the characters pretty well in my head and figure out who's telling the story and why they're telling the story. And that usually doesn't change for me once I start.
Okay. When you stuck with it, because that's good.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to do these 2, and then I'm like, or
not. Yeah.
Whatever.
I took out on the story of coming out in March. I had 3 points of view and I had to take one out altogether. So I do have some fun cut scenes, but still that hurt. So
that's
sometimes
hard.
all the voices we choose don't end up in the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that actually has happened to me in the past, but it'll usually be like a smaller point of view that I'll cut out. This to me felt sort of evenly like it's not really even. I think Amelia has more chapters.
She has
but
more.
It feels like they share the story though, for sure. I mean, it doesn't feel like one's like a minor and one's a major.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about Gloria's house for a second. So it is in the remotes of Washington State, and it is so drop dead gorgeous. You did such a good job describing it. I can see it, that I want to go there. And there is so much secrecy around Amelia's arrival there. So was there a house that was an inspiration? Is there something you used? Did this house just like grow out of your head? This house is amazing. And the area that surrounds it too.
Yeah. I will say once, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, I was on a book tour and I was in Seattle, and then I did an event in Bellingham, which I don't know if you guys have ever gone there, but there's like a beautiful bookstore there. And I took an Amtrak train between Seattle and Bellingham, and it was like the most beautiful train ride I've ever been in. And I just remember thinking like, I need to set a book somewhere here, not necessarily in Seattle, not in Bellingham, but just sort of like on the way in between, where it was a little bit more rural, but just like beautiful and wooded. And there were some houses, you could see from the train. Gloria's, I'm sure, wouldn't be in distance of the train, but I always wanted to put that in a book. And so I thought, like, well, I want Gloria to be somewhere remote. I loved the fact that it was sort of like rainy and foggy, and I don't know. I finally got to use that like 2-hour train ride by putting it in this book. The house, though, I just sort of made up.
Okay.
And I mean, and she lives in a house, but it's sort of not as spectacular as you would think from like her diamond studded life. And that is a plot point eventually.
But it feels so well-rounded. Like if you gave me a picture of that house, I would say that's the house. So.
I feel like a little bit of the house is like the house my parents live in, which is not in Washington, still in Pennsylvania, but they live in this sort of like older house in the woods, sort of away from everything. So I think a little bit of the house came from that. Cool. But yeah, the area was my train ride on my book tour.
That's so cool. I love that. Well, that was the useful train ride. Okay, so there is a phrase that appears more than once in the story that ends up being very important, and that is the small moments in the middle, which is a very powerful line. So is that another one of those lines that kind of just came to you? And did you mean for it to have this importance in the book, or was it just happenstance?
No, I meant for it. I mean, the first line is, as you mentioned before, is like sometimes the beginning of everything sneaks up on you when you least expect it. And then the first line of the epilogue is sometimes the end of, oh wait, maybe I switched them. Yeah, I switched them. The first line is sometimes the end of everything sneaks up on you when you least expect it. And then the first line of the epilogue is sometimes the beginning of everything sneaks up on you when you least expect it. And so I think, like, as writers, we're always thinking about the beginnings and the endings and like giving such importance to that. And for any story, I always think it's the middle. That's really like what makes a book good. So I wanted to get that in there. I mean, Gloria's a writer, so I feel like there's some writing nods in the book. I wanted that to like parallel with the beginning and with the end. So that was intentional. I didn't think of that right away though. Like that was definitely something that came in the revision.
I love that. Like you said, Gloria is a writer, a famous romance novelist. And this book, like you just mentioned, is chock full of writer speak. Things like this, Gloria says, beginnings are the easy part. Endings are the hardest to get right, and you have to earn the happy ending. So this novel is, in many ways, a story inside a story. We have the movie that's being made, which is based on a memoir, which is based on a novel, which is based on her life. Like there's these kind of nesting stories going on. Did you dive into your own writing beliefs for Gloria? Did you kind of dig into what you believe about writing and put them in this glamorous romance novelist's mouth?
Maybe a little bit, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that she says about writing. I certainly am nothing like Gloria, and I don't have diamonds on my desk or on my dogs who are sitting behind me. But yeah, I think a little bit. The stuff that she says about writing is stuff that I think is true. And you're right that it is sort of like a story within a story, because we're seeing Mara's story unfold, which is her real story. And then there's also her memoir, which is being made into a movie, which is like the fictionalized version of her story. So I did. Yeah. I think anything in writing that's about writing in the book is like sort of based on me.
I love that.
Well, there's a lot in this novel about what we would or wouldn't do for fame and for love. And so I would go so far as to say that's a little bit of like a theme in this novel. So when you went into writing this, did you know that those would be themes that would kind of come up? Like, I know, we talked to a lot of different authors on here, and sometimes people will say, this was a theme and I really wanted to hit hard on this. And then some people, like me, have no idea until after the book is written. And hopefully someone says, well, I really liked how this book is about. And I'm like, oh, good. That's what it's about.
Yeah. I think that I don't know at first, but I do usually figure it out myself before I get to the end of the first draft. Like I'll write a line or I'll write a scene, and maybe I'll be 3/4 of the way through the first draft and it'll be like, oh, that's what I've been saying this whole time. And then of course I'll have to go back and revise it. But I never know that going in. I don't think, at least not completely. I knew that there were going to be multiple love stories in the story about a romance novelist. And I knew that it was going to be a little bit about fame, but I didn't really know what I was trying to say until I wrote most of the book. And also, sometimes like an editor will come in and will give you a note and be like, well, you're saying this about fame. And it's like, oh, that is what I'm saying.
Thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
So smart.
Yeah. Right. I meant to do that all along.
I was thinking about that at like 3 a.m. and I thought I'd work it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of themes, I love that a lot of people think, and there's a line, I think it's in Lucy Barton, where she is talking to someone, and she said to her writing teacher, I don't know what to write about. And her writing teacher, I'm mangling this is a paraphrase. And her writing teacher essentially said, don't worry what it's about. You'll tell the same story over and over again. Hi, Doggy.
Yeah.
So in other words, authors seem sometimes to return again and again to the same themes or to the same message. And I'm not sure if that's true. But if it is there something you see yourself looking at from many angles over and over?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my dog is like, I don't know. I
We
think I'm
love
getting a
dogs.
package or something.
There could be a squirrel or something big.
It could be
Yeah,
a
it
ghost.
doesn't.
It could be a
It
ghost.
could be a ghost. We always say we have ghosts because she's like barking at nothing. So I
Nothing,
think
yeah.
there really is one that could go into a book.
Yeah.
I think something I return to like again and again in general is my characters are like always women who are always sort of like searching for something or like coming into their own or trying to achieve something. And so that's like a very general way to put it. But I would say I've written a lot of different kinds of books, like historical, contemporary, suspense, books that lean more towards romance, but I've always had these like strong women characters that are trying to find their way in the world.
I love that. I love that. Before you were a writer, did you have another job? I know you have an MFA, but when was the moment that you said, I'm going to be a writer? Like that is the path I'm going on. When did you first feel that was your calling, if it is? And when did you first go after it?
I think I was 9 when I told everyone I was going to be a writer. So it's like it started pretty young.
Wow.
And I, changed my mind a lot after that. Obviously, I was 9. There was a period in high school where I thought I was going to go to medical school. And I don't know why. I took like AP Human Anatomy or something crazy in 11th grade. And it was horrible. I had to dissect a cat. It was like the worst thing I've ever done in my life. And then I was like, nope. I'm not going to be a doctor. That was actually wrong.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's not that I stayed on that path the whole time. And when I went to college, I started off in journalism and I had an internship with the paper the summer after my freshman year and also did not like it. I mean, granted, I was an intern, so I was going to like school board meetings all summer, but I was so bored and I thought, this is not what I like about writing. This is not why I want to be a writer. And so I would say probably in the middle of college, after I had that internship, I went back, I took a fiction writing class. And that's when I thought, all right, this is the kind of writing that I want to do. I was always a really big reader of novels, which is why in 4th grade, I decided I wanted to write them. But I think it probably took me until I was like 20 to say, okay, this is what I want to do. And I did teach for a few years, but I was writing at the same time. So I think I kind of always wanted to be a writer. And even though I had other jobs, I didn't ever think like, well, this is going to be my career. I was sort of always doing them while working towards the goal of a writing career.
I love hearing how everybody,
Yeah.
like what was the moment you said for, some people, they said it at 9 years old. For others like me, I said it at 35. So yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to be a doctor too. That's funny. But I actually felt I went to journalism school and said I would never write fiction, that I would only tell real people's stories, which I think is kind of funny that we were like the opposite in that. Like I went and was like, oh, well, I'm terrible at like creative writing. We'll never do that. It's funny how we get to where we
And
are.
I was like, this is so boring. It would be so much better if I could just make some stuff up, which of course you can't do.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay. So there's a question that we love to ask on here that I think Patti originally came up with it, but it's always a really fun one. So what were the values around reading and writing in your house when you were growing up?
My mom was and is a huge reader, like always reading.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a TV in the 80s. I don't think we had cable for a while though. Like my friends had cable and we just had our little antenna. And so we could just like watch the news while we were eating dinner. And so we didn't really watch a lot of TV, which I've definitely made up for in adulthood. I watch way too much TV now. But I don't know. My mom was always like, well, go read a book if you're bored or, go read a book if you want some entertainment. And so that's basically what I did. And in the summer, she used to take us to the library. Like that would be my sister and my entertainment. We go to the library. We could check out our 10 books. That's all you were allowed. I'd bring them all home. I'd read them. And then like 3 days later, I'd have to beg my mom to take me back to the library again, which she always would. She was very good sport about it. But, everyone was always reading. And then we would go to the beach on vacation and we would just all sit there with our books and be reading. So it's definitely a big part of my life growing up. And I mean, like my mom is still a big reader. She's always asking me like, what books I would recommend and telling me, she reads more than I do now. Because I sort of negotiate, like when I'm writing, I don't read as much, or I try not to read in the genre that I'm writing in, at least. So she's always like, read this book, and I have to put it on my list for when I'm done writing.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that I would bet, I'd have to look back, but I would bet 90% of the people we've asked that question use the word library somewhere in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
true.
Okay, Jillian, if you'll stick around, we actually have more to talk about. But first, a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
So for all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of The Greatest Lie of All. The perfect place to do that is on the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll be getting the book at a discount and helping to fund our show, all while supporting our wonderful guests like Jillian and our beloved independent booksellers nationwide.
We also want to remind you to follow us on Instagram and join our Facebook group, which is now more than 250,000 members strong. And even though numbers aren't my forte, that's over 250,000. So when you visit friendsandfiction.com, you can stay up to date about everything we have going on, and you can sign up for our Endless Stories newsletter on Substack. So Jillian, what are you working on now? I know you're really excited about this book. I know Laura, our editor, is really excited about it. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I am working on a book about 3 sisters, and I love telling sister stories. I have to say, I have a younger sister, and I feel like that relationship is one I come back to in fiction again and again, because it's like so fun to explore and think about. But this book is very much about sisterhood. It's 3 sisters. They inherit their grandmother's beach house in Coronado in 1999. And then they sort of make a pact that they're going to come the same week in May every single year and have like a sisters week. And so the book follows them over 20 years as they do that. And in the most recent year, the oldest sister just doesn't show up. So it's like a little bit of a mystery because they have to figure out what happened to her. But it's just a lot about like sister connections and
love it.
And yeah, and like what, family, and there's a lot about their grandmother. And it is set in Coronado, which is like my favorite place in the world. So it's been really, really fun to write.
Oh, that sounds so good. I love sister stories.
Me too. Okay, so Jillian, everyone's going to want to keep up with you so that they know when that one's coming out. So can you tell us where we can find you online?
Sure. I mean, my website is just jilliancantor.com, but I'm mostly on Instagram. If people want to connect on social media, at Jillian Cantor. It's like a lot of dog and cat pictures, but I do also share book news as well.
Yeah.
We all need more dog and cat pictures and less of what we've been seeing.
We do.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about The Greatest Lie of All. I would like Kristy to sing a little more Greatest Love of All, but we'll hold off on that.
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. Thank you, Jillian.
Okay, and be sure to tune in next week when we will be together live to welcome our friends Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb to discuss their new novel, Christmas with the Queen. That show will air live on the Friends and Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, December 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it will be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, December 20th.
Thank you so much to you, Jillian, for everyone being here with us, and to Alan behind the scenes, and we will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.